Mummy aliens plot to take over the Earth, and only one person stands in their way. Spider-Woman. Well, Spider-Man's there too, so two really, plus Jeff and Billy sort of help a little bit. Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rick. Hello, everyone.
And today, possibly by popular demand, we're going to be talking about what is possibly the most gloriously stupid thing we've talked about on this show.
And that's saying a lot.
Yes.
That's covering some ground, folks.
There was some excitement on our Facebook group about just discussing this show, and we decided to bump it into the schedule.
Yes.
And
we couldn't leave it off. I think that people have demanded it.
One of the unsung but most exciting things on the new Disney Plus service, the Spider-Woman cartoon from 1979. Only 16 episodes, but boy, they pack a lot into these episodes.
They really do.
So good on Disney for throwing this thing up there.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things missing, which you wrote about on our website.
Yeah, this is there, and it's not something that has really been widely seen or publicized in the last 40 years, so I'm glad that it's up there.
Yeah. So Spider-Woman, the character, debuted in Marvel Comics really not long before this.
No, and it has some interesting origins.
Yes. If you believe Stan Lee, he only created the character to make sure no one else took advantage of the idea, and sort of, since they had Spider-Man, they didn't want some other company having Spider-Woman.
Right.
Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. It seems like the people tasked with doing this did then come up with something, and the character stuck around. But
right, and they had years to do that too. So I guess there's also a story that it was inspired or prompted by another cartoon. Web Woman, I believe it was. There was a cartoon, Tarzan and the Super 7 by Filmation, and one of the segments was like Web Woman and Spinner. And apparently it seems like there's a theory that kind of prompted them, like, oh, hey, we got to take advantage of this Spider-Woman, or people are going to be confused. And, Web Woman has insect powers, including not just spiders, and let's not get into the whole insect arachnid thing. But I did watch one of those just yesterday, actually, and it's worth watching. Check it out. The Tarzan the Super 7 had all these weird segments, including one of them. But interestingly, Tarzan the Super 7 had, in another of the segments, had Joan Van Ark was a character. And Joan Van Ark is the voice of Spider-Woman on this. Yeah. Spider-Woman. Right. So it didn't seem like, there may be some element of truth or maybe not, but it doesn't seem, what there is not, there's no story of anybody coming up with like a great other explanation for Spider-Woman's creation. Yeah. It doesn't sound like there was some dramatic inspiration that suddenly hit anybody.
Right. Maybe there was some desire to have another female character or something. And she debuted in like, not her own comic, but I think Marvel Fanfare or something like that.
Yeah, which is like a really cool cover.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's the one with her like on a wall or something with like a spotlight. It's kind of like a motif that you see a lot. Yeah. But I guess it did well enough that, they gave her a regular series.
Yeah. And she's not really that connected to Spider-Man, or at least wasn't at the time, other than the spider part. But, her comic origins and the in-universe origins are pretty weird, too, and convoluted, and don't really match the cartoon ones, or kind of do, but involves the High Evolutionary, which is a super weird character, and Hydra, and all this stuff. And so I read the first issue of her comic. And it's odd. So one of her powers in the comics, she has these pheromone powers, and sometimes they can make people do what she wants, but they are also very off-putting. So she's very isolated.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Plus having this weird upbringing that she just doesn't entirely know how to function, and like she's trying to get a job and she can't get a job because she's so off-putting.
Right.
And people coming, whoa, she's beautiful, but something gives me the chills. I don't know. I think her comic lasted a while, and then she got depowered at some point. But she did have like a resurgence in the like the last 10, 15 years. This writer Brian Bendis added her to Avengers and wrote a solo comic for her and a miniseries, kind of making her origin make a little more sense. And just he has this reputation for finding characters that are a little lesser known and finding what works in them and making them more popular. She's had a costume redesign recently that I don't know that it was necessary, but it was a good design. But it was more like a practical. And I guess some people don't like the typical costume.
Oh, really? And like in the 90s, they had another person be Spider-Woman, right?
Yes.
Like, there's an action figure and a cartoon.
They were mini Spider-Women.
Was it like a black suit or a dark blue suit or something with a white spider on it?
Yeah, like a black, kind of like Spider-Man's black and white costume. And then they had this more recently the Spider-Gwen character who's in the the Spider-Verse movie, and she was going by Spider-Woman for a while in her universe. But yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of remarkable that we can agree that she was far from an A-list Marvel character that she somehow got her own animated series.
Right.
And it's kind of why I wish there were. I didn't find a lot of information about the production or creation of this series, and that it seems like that's something like a lot of these old Marvel cartoons. You'd think there'd be more information about them, but not getting a whole lot of great information. But I'm curious as to what went on behind the scenes and how this was made and why.
Right.
Why pick Spider-Woman?
Yeah.
It's probably like as simple as like, well, yeah, it'd be nice to get a female character, but it seems even with we've talked in the late 70s, you had Wonder Woman attempted a Captain America show, the Hulk, and there were a lot of superheroes going on, but it still seems like kind of a bizarre choice to have a whole animated show based on this relatively new character. But
I don't know that Marvel had they had Miss Marvel. That's about it for solo female characters at that point.
Yeah, that's true. Somebody that wasn't in a group.
She-Hulk started, but
yeah.
Which supposedly, I think I've heard that same excuse, the copyright thing for She-Hulk.
Yeah.
So.
And I think.
And the cartoon, is says created for television by Stan Lee.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe. And I think I read, wasn't that like an excuse too for the failure of the cartoon? Was that like, well, people didn't want Spider-Woman and She-Hulk. They saw them as knockoffs of the main characters.
Yeah.
Which I think is silly because why would anybody think they're completely distinct characters?
Right.
Notwithstanding the appearance of Spider-Man in the episode we're going to talk about, they're really not the same at all. I don't see She-Hulk maybe a little bit more, but the Spider-Woman thing, I don't see anything about it that suggests the universe of Spider-Man and
no, other than they gave her some of his powers that she doesn't have in the comics.
Yeah. Well, in this cartoon, she's got all kinds of powers.
She's got it, yeah. Whatever she needs.
Yes, we should say now the cartoon does not follow many of these things that you talked about in the comic book.
No, now that I did see again, and like on Marvel Unlimited, they only have maybe 10 issues of the comic, but that it did have like a supernatural bent to it for a while, which this show definitely has.
Yes.
A lot of aliens and monsters and things.
Right. But
other than that, and her name being Jessica Drew, and the design being faithful except for yellow eyes.
Yeah.
Which Spider-Man has too.
Yeah. And I'll say if you're planning on dipping into this, and maybe we're going to talk about the very first episode, but maybe you watch another one and you think, well, maybe I should go back and watch the episode where they explain all this. I don't think there is one.
No.
I haven't seen quite all the episodes yet, but you get the introduction, the standard opening, which sort of sets it up. And then there's another episode that kind of goes back a little bit to her father injecting him with the serum. But like things that we're wondering about, they're not explained. Right. Just go with it.
Yeah. So the in the introduction, it just says she was bitten by a spider and her dad used experimental spider serum, which gave her the powers of spiders.
Yeah, so I think it's labeled like number 34 or something. He's pulling it out of his shelf.
Yes.
Like a worried look in his face.
Which again is vaguely, I forget. I mean, I've read about it and read versions of something. There is some accident. He has been experimenting on things like this with this guy who becomes the high evolutionary. And they inject her with this, and it does save her life. But then she has to be in like an incubator for a long time, and she actually is like part spider because of it or something. So very different than Peter Parker.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, they simplify.
Yeah.
Probably for the best, I guess.
Yes, and it only lasted 16 episodes. It was on ABC, and I guess I was probably a little too young. I don't really remember watching the show, but you know what I do remember is I remember seeing the comic books and seeing like the lineup of ABC shows and Spider-Woman being mentioned. For what that's worth, it was on at 11 o'clock, which is a little late in the morning too.
Yeah, I kind of remember watching it, but maybe it showed up later on in syndication or something.
Yeah,
probably not with that few episodes, but I definitely knew it was around. I remember trying to watch it on YouTube a few years ago, and not having the same. Maybe it was a dud episode.
Oh yeah.
Because when I watched this one, I emailed you immediately.
Yeah. Like, one thing that I think has going for it is, I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if you go through like the Marvel section on Disney Plus, and you arrange it like chronologically, it shows up first because they don't have anything before that. So that's one little thing that makes it stand out. If anybody wants to go, let's see how far back their Marvel stuff goes. Right now, this is the one that they have as the earliest one, which hopefully they change that at some point. But this predated Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, so. And
it's DePate Freeling Studio, which did the Pink Panther and
and this was, I think, was their last series actually.
The series that killed them.
Yeah. Well, this one, I want to tell you something about this particular episode. Ooh. So we're going to talk about Pyramids of Terror, the series premiere, which aired September 22nd, 1979. I did a little research and found out something else in prime time that debuted September 22nd, 1979. An episode that longtime listeners of our podcast will hopefully remember us talking about. But it would be very difficult to guess, but it makes an interesting thought to think about. Getting up in the morning, watching some TV, watching this episode of Spider-Woman, which is totally crazy. And then later that night, turning on the TV to one of the networks and watching something that we've covered in the past.
Doctor Strange?
No, good guess. But in fact, Roller Disco from Chips premiered this night on NBC. So, wow, a lot going on,
Yeah, jam-packed.
Yeah, so...
And you looked into some of what else was on the other networks, right?
Yeah, I did. And the interesting thing is, like, ABC on Saturday mornings in the fall, they start out with The World's Greatest Super Friends at 8. Then they had, like, the Plastic Man comedy adventure hour or whatever it was. And then Spider-Woman, and then Scooby and Scrappy-Doo. So they were really loaded up with superheroes. And that Plastic Man, I think, was on like a long time, like a couple of hours. So I think they must have mixed it in with other things or something.
Yeah.
So at 11 o'clock on CBS, you would be in the middle of the all-new Popeye hour. And on NBC, they would have the New Adventures of Flash Gordon.
Man.
But there were, if you look around, and actually on NBC at 10 o'clock, Super Globetrotters, which we were just talking about.
Yes, that's right.
Was on at the same time. And it's interesting, if you look at the schedules, you're all over the place. Like CBS had Mighty Mouse, Heckle and Jekyll, Bugs and the Roadrunner, the new Fat Albert Show. And this is just before noon. I mean, the schedules were actually extending past that. And on NBC, you actually had the Daffy Duck Show. So you had Bugs and the Roadrunner on CBS. And then an hour earlier on another network, you had the Daffy Duck Show, which is interesting. And also on NBC, Saturday mornings, Casper and the Teen Angels, Fred and Barney Meet the Thing, which is interesting. The Super Globetrotters, the New Shmoo, Flash Gordon, which I mentioned, and Godzilla at 11:30.
Wow.
So really heavy on like some popular like superheroes.
I watched a lot of Flash Gordon too.
Yeah. So that would have been on probably the same time as Spider-Woman for a lot of its run.
Yeah.
So kind of a lot of cool stuff on there. And then by the spring, it looks to me like Captain Caveman essentially replaced Spider-Woman on ABC's lineup, I think. So I'm not sure how that worked out with shows moving around different networks and things like that. But there's a lot of stuff going on Saturday mornings. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So you can see how when I talk about why we remember those distinctive ads, because those full page ads would have all the drawings and stuff. It'd be like, oh man, there's so much cool stuff on just on one network.
Yeah. Boy, I don't know how we managed.
Well, you might say, I think it would be a natural conclusion to say that in order to stand out on Saturday morning, a new cartoon show would have to be totally wild, totally packed with all kinds of things. Maybe it would be best to make a show that doesn't make any sense at all in order for it to stand out in such a crowded lineup. Would that be fair to say?
Right, not like the staid Super Friends.
No. Well, and I didn't verify this, but many of the episodes of Spider-Woman were written by Jeff Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was Jeff Scott, is this the same Jeffrey Scott that wrote many of the Super Friends episodes, I wonder?
Ooh.
Because I can see some of the elements of that Jeffrey Scott and some of these episodes, like the total lack of attention to internal logic, the willingness to do anything for like an interesting story and just dispense with, setting up certain things. So
Yeah.
it could be, but it seems like this guy seems to be the main writer for almost all the episodes I've seen.
Yes. Yeah.
So he definitely put his stamp on the show.
Or it's just an alias for Stanley for some reason. Or
Jeff Scott Stanley. Yeah. Could be. Could be.
Yes. So it's this is, to me, the quintessential Spider-Woman episode, though, of the ones we've seen.
I think it really does represent like everything that we love about this show.
Yes. So it starts where you think a Spider-Woman show or a superhero show in general would start on a windy street in Egypt.
Of course, yes.
And so a mother, I guess, or maybe a grandmother and a boy, they're trying to deal with this wind, and the wind picks up the boy.
Yeah, literally.
Yes, but luckily he lands in a web.
Yes.
And you think, oh, Spider-Woman's here. Mm-hmm. No, it's Spider-Man. Why he's in Egypt, we don't know.
Yeah.
How he got to Egypt, we don't know. Is he just a tourist? Did he come because of the storm? Yeah.
We don't know these things.
Yeah. It's not important because then a giant pink pyramid rises out of the desert.
Yeah.
So, we got other things to learn about.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes to investigate this pyramid and goes inside it and then gets attacked by a mummy.
Yeah. This mummy, like a seemingly mindless yelling mummy.
Yes. But he's got eye beams.
Yeah, but yes.
And can melt Spider-Man's webs. So.
Yes, as my girlfriend Lori has pointed out, to this and other stuff, pretty much around this time period, everything was lasers. And pretty much every episode of Spider-Woman will have some kind of laser or ray blast or something.
Right.
Or some kind.
Yes. The safe way to have violence.
Yes.
Yeah. And Spider-Man gets caught by the giant mummy. And then we cut to city in America. I'm going to assume New York because it's Marvel, but who knows? And we're outside a museum. And this museum, because I want to come back to this, looks like you would think stereotypical museum.
Mm-hmm.
Some big steps and the columns and stuff. And
big sign outside.
Yeah, but, not a skyscraper thing.
No. Correct.
And they're having the King Kultut exhibit.
Mm-hmm.
And as we've said before, Egyptians were very popular in the 70s.
Yeah.
And inside, we meet Jessica Drew. Of course, we met her in the introduction, but we see
and this is Jessica Drew.
Yes.
We see Spider-Woman like kind of, and then the narrator says, "And this is Jessica Drew." Like, and this is Jessica Drew.
Right.
In addition to, I don't know, it's weird.
And she's posing in front of the exhibit, and this photographer, Jeff, is taking her picture.
Yeah, she's kind of awkwardly posing, actually, I thought. But.
And then he says, this will make a perfect cover for Justice magazine. Like, what kind of magazine puts the editor on the cover?
Yeah, posing in front of an exhibit.
Right.
Like.
And what does this have to do with justice?
Yeah. It's kind of like... the only thing I can think of is like, well, the New Yorker has that Eustace Tilley character that they put on the cover a lot.
Uh-huh.
Mad Magazine might put Alfred E. Newman on the cover a lot, and that John F. Kennedy Jr. political magazine, George, I think it had people dressed as George Washington or George Washington on the cover.
Yes.
But other than that, that doesn't make sense to me.
But again, we don't have time to think about that because a mummy comes to life.
Yes.
And, right before that, we get introduced to Jessica's spider sense.
Yeah.
Now, if you know your Spider-Man a little bit, the spider sense there's some malleability to what it does. But essentially, it's like a sixth sense, an early reflex kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Hers is like actual psychic impressions. And this is one of the many powers she does not have in the comics.
Okay. Oh.
She doesn't have any kind of spider sense.
Yes, and she has spider sense that gives her, works across all space and time, apparently, too.
Yes. So she already knows Spider-Man's in trouble, and then this mummy comes to life, and she thinks, and I like that they always use for the spider sense and for her thinking the same bit of animation.
Yes, with her, like she has a headache.
Yeah.
Like grimacing and closing her eyes and tilting her head and holding her forehead.
But it's like one of the better pieces of animation in the show.
Yes.
Like the design of her face and stuff.
Yeah.
It's just, as many of these shows, they can't quite stay on
No.
target. But she thinks she's got to find a way to get out of here so she can turn into Spider-Woman. And then Jeff says, "You need to get out of here."
Yeah.
Which is common because Jeff thinks she's a weak woman and can't deal with it. But it's perfect for her.
Right.
And she goes and she does like a Wonder Woman spin and turns into Spider Woman and uses her Venom Blast, something she does have in the comics.
Okay.
Which are like lasers.
Yeah.
And stops the mummy. And then Jeff, I could have handled that.
Yes. Now, this is after, though, Jeff, like, falls backwards. Like, the mummy is chasing him. And
Well,
Jeff's trying to... He does, to his credit, surprisingly, based on how he acts later in the series, he does sort of make a pretense of trying to stop him.
Yeah.
But he winds up plummeting backwards out the open window.
Right, I set this up and I forgot.
Yes, of the museum.
Yes, which now is maybe just the back of the building is much higher than the front because he's dangling over a city street and almost plummets to his death.
Yes, and and we didn't even mention the fact that the museum is now virtually deserted and that she can do her spinning thing like unnoticed by anybody right in the middle of the exhibit floor.
Right.
I guess they all ran away.
From
the mummy.
So she saves him by spinning a web. Add this to the category of powers she does not have in the comics.
Yes, like her.
She's not a web spinner.
That's right. She's got the web in her spider line.
Yeah, or those are the same.
Yeah, like the white is the spider line.
Oh.
Which she uses sometimes for like as a like if she needs something like not in the shape of a web. She has her spider line that she like to tie somebody up.
Okay.
Rope and stuff like that.
That's different than
yeah.
Okay. Well, she doesn't have either of those.
Yeah, right.
That's my point.
Yes.
But and that almost looks like a laser the way they animate it.
Yes, it does. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And makes a kind of a laser sound. Mm-hmm. Then we go back to Justice Magazine. Now, Justice Magazine, which from all the episodes I've seen only has 2.5 employees.
Yes.
Presumably they have people running the presses and all that, but
we never see that. But yes.
As far as editorial, there's Jessica, there's Jeff, and then another person we're going to meet who's more an intern.
Yeah.
Or something. But Justice Magazine has its own skyscraper.
Yeah.
On the top of it, like the logo there, has a helipad on the roof. Inside, she has a very swank office with, as I've noticed, not one, but 2 hi-fis.
Yeah. Very spacious. And,
yes.
And yes. 2 hi-fis. Wow.
So her nephew Billy comes in. Her 12-year-old nephew Billy, who on his own is like one of the worst kind of characters possible. But when you pair him with Jeff, you get magic.
Yeah.
Because Jeff is a pretty terrible character.
He is, yeah.
But because right before that, Jeff was just saying, let's forget about this or whatever. Or there's not enough story or something.
Yeah.
And he comes in and says, there's mummies all over the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Jeff turns around. Jeff, an adult.
Yeah.
Turns around to his kids. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Right.
This is utter contempt for him.
Yeah. Now,
frankly, Billy has utter contempt for Jeff.
But. Yeah. Now, in later episodes, Billy will be seen more of thwarting some of Jeff's ideas for, alone time with Jessica.
Yes.
And Billy kind of gets in the way of that. So you can kind of see the tension there.
Right.
Yeah. Another thing I want to point out is Jessica, by all indications, is in charge here. And it's her magazine, right?
Yeah.
But like, there's one point I think in this episode where Jeff says something. She's like, "Okay, you're the boss."
Yes.
And maybe she meant it like in a light way, but it's like, no, you're the boss.
Right. You're the boss.
Jeff's not the boss of anything.
Because there's this ongoing thing where Jessica kind of plays the helpless female.
Yeah.
When of course in reality she's Spider-Woman, she's very capable.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is quite literally winking at the audience.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Like, look at this dumb guy.
Right. I think so, actually. I think it is. I think we are supposed to. They do a pretty good job of exposing what an idiot Jeff is.
Yes.
Not really making you sympathize with him at all.
Right.
It's possible that maybe there's a kind of an arrangement where it's understood that Jessica is more like the publisher, but Jeff thinks he has some degree of editorial control.
Right.
In a lot of episodes, it does seem like he's suggesting story ideas, and it's kind of ridiculous that I'm talking about this seriously as I am. But, maybe there's some... It does seem like Jessica does give some editorial decisions and input to Jeff.
Yeah.
I mean, she has to. There's only 2.5 employees.
Right.
But they're a little inconsistent. And I think one thing we would both like to know is a little bit more about the inner workings of Justice Magazine. We haven't seen it yet.
Publishing schedule.
Yeah. Right.
I think the only episode I saw a copy of the magazine, it looked more like newspaper.
Yeah.
I don't know. These are different things.
Yeah.
Is it a glossy? Is it?
I don't know.
Square bound, stapled.
I mean, sometimes it seems like it's like a Time magazine or something like that. Is what you'd think, or Life.
Right.
But other times it seems to be remarkably nimble as far as coming out with new editions and reacting to things.
Yeah. But after that, Jessica decides she's going to call Chief Cooper,
Yes.
who seems like he's going to be a regular character.
Yeah,
I don't think he ever comes back.
There's a chief that shows up in another episode. I'm not sure if it's the same guy.
Oh, okay.
I think he might be like in one other episode, maybe.
Yeah.
But it had some real potential.
Yeah, he's like crusty, kind of Lionel Barrymore.
Yeah, yeah. And I like how she summons him with like this really cool TV screen on her desk.
Yes.
And then they show the chief, and he's watching her on his TV screen, but his is like twice as big as hers.
Yeah.
He's got an even bigger one.
That makes sense. And all of it is like now was very conceivable, but then it's very sci-fi sort of.
Yeah.
Like it's a flat screen TV that hides in her desk.
Yeah.
She pushes a button and calls him, and then just annoys him.
Yeah.
You think he wouldn't give her video conference privilege.
Right.
And I like it. He's like totally. He's like, I haven't heard about any mummies, and then this guy just pops in. There's an APB reporting mummies all over the world.
Yep.
And then she hangs up on him too.
Yeah, abruptly. And then she says, "Oops, must have gotten cut off after she's hung." I guess she's just saying that as a reflex to, like, she has to explain something even though he's already off the line.
So she's like, "We need to figure out where are these mummies going? I guess they're all walking somewhere. Again, we don't know if their goal is where their goal supposedly is. Mm-hmm. They're not all going to get there.
One would think, no,
but they're not regular mummies. So Jeff's like, "There's no way to do that," and Billy's like, "Yeah, there is," and he spouts off all this math, and then he pushes a bunch of buttons on a calculator. Yeah. He's like, "They're going to Egypt."
Yeah.
And Jeff is like, "Yeah, I don't buy. Or, I don't remember."
How did you really figure that out?
Like, where else would mummies go?
Yeah. And his calculator, he does have like a number like 619.57 or something like that. Is apparently the answer to where the mummies are going.
And I believe that's like really horribly animated. His finger just poking a bunch of. So Jessica and Jeff are going to fly in the jet copter.
Yeah, that's the Justice jet copter.
Yes.
Helipad.
And Billy wants to go, but she says no. But
she quickly relaxes that stance in later episodes. And I guess decides, well, might as well just come along with this.
He's going to stow away anyway.
Yeah, but at first she doesn't want him. No place for him.
So he does stow away in the camera gear box. And so the jet copter seems to be very fast.
Yeah. And now, let me interrupt you if I may here, Mike.
Yes.
We named the number of employees. Surely Justice Magazine has a pilot on retainer to fly the jet copter, correct? Another employee, at least maybe a crew even.
No, Jeff does that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Just thought I'd ask.
He's a trained jet
pilot. That's good.
Yeah. Goes away every year for lessons.
Right.
So now, I don't know exactly what a jet copter would be in the real world. Airwolf was sort of a jet copter.
Okay.
I assume it would be faster than a helicopter, but I don't think it would be faster than a jet, because helicopters seem to me to be a little slower than jets.
Yeah, I don't think they can physically go faster than a jet.
Right. This one, on the other hand, does New York or wherever they are to Egypt in, I don't know, 30 seconds.
Pretty fast, yeah.
Yes, it's like Star Wars travel. Like, just, all right, we're there.
Yeah, they get in a wormhole and make it to Egypt in record time.
And they land in, I'm saying Cairo. They don't really identify it, but presumably. And like it's totally trashed.
Yes.
Just in ruins, minarets tilted over. Nobody's around. So Jessica decides it's a good time to become Spider-Woman. Maybe she had another spider sense.
Yeah. I think she did a vision of, she had a vision of Spider-Man like in being tied up or like trapped.
Right. So she's like, I got to go take care of something. Like, just vague. And he's like,
I got business to take care of.
Yeah, I got business to take care of.
Oh, yeah.
I think I forgot to put the cat out.
Yeah, I better gotta go call and make sure.
And then just like, Jessica has a cat?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well.
Yeah, we'll meet up later.
Presumably this is not, even though it's the first episode, this is not their first rodeo with all this.
Yeah, right. It's implied that they've been working at Justice for a while. So
while she's off changing to Spider-Woman, we go back to the pyramid and we learn that the mummies. So the guy, the mummy we saw earlier, who seemed to be just is actually very talkative.
Yeah.
And he's part of a species of aliens who's been hibernating for millions of years, waiting for their armada of flying pyramids to arrive.
Yes.
From the planet Hotep.
Yeah.
I think his name is Khufu.
Yes, and they've already been to Earth.
Yes. They're like the sleeper agents.
Yeah.
And the rest are coming.
So they're coming back to reclaim the planet.
But before they do, he and the other mummies have to mummify the rest of humanity.
Yeah. Ugh.
Boy.
Diabolical.
And meanwhile, Jeff and Billy wander in the pyramid, which Billy's never seen in his textbooks.
Yeah.
And they trip a light sensor, and they sink in a bunch of sand.
Yeah, actually, if I may point out one thing too, because one thing that I enjoyed was that part of his explanation, his justification for coming along, Billy's, was that maybe I can help you like translate some hieroglyphics or something.
Right. Yeah.
And then you go and like the hieroglyphics are like hilarious. There's like random like symbols and stuff, and like I think one is like it's the number 2 and 3 like combined together, and this is the complex hieroglyphics in the.
But then Jessica later, or Spider Woman, sees them, and she's like, "I've studied hieroglyphics, but I've never seen ones like these."
Yes, these advanced ones. So I didn't see Billy doing a lot of this when he was just wandering around the pyramids.
Yeah. And he was also going to help with the local culture.
Yeah, that's right. Help with like cultural protocol.
Yes.
So yeah, they're wandering, I think is a good word, wandering around the pyramids.
Yes, and then they get trapped. So then Spider-Woman flies over the pyramid and climbs in, and the mummy traps her. A lot of trapping.
Yeah. Well, I think, is this the one where she actually like confronts the mummy and he insults her and says, "Your inferiority is proven by how easy you are to trap."
Yes.
And then a trap door opens right underneath her and she falls in and it's like, well, he's right.
And then we see all these pyramid ships taking off out of the desert to go mummify people around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, after struggling with things, Spider-Woman realizes she uses her high-frequency spider hearing.
Yes.
I don't think she has this one in the comics either. And
probably not.
She hears sand spiders. And of course, they can dig her way out. But first she has to use her spider telepathy to tell them to.
Yes.
Needless to say, she doesn't have that one in the comics either.
No, and how long do you think it would take sand spiders to free her from that scenario?
A while.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there are more of them than we see. Like, there are hundreds of them.
There must be, like, millions of them, because they get her out of that situation pretty quick. And we don't even really see the sand spiders doing anything. They just do it, and then she's freed from the collapsing wall.
Yeah.
Like, compacting wall that's going to crush her.
Right. And then she goes and saves Jeff and Billy and Spider-Man.
Yeah, I like that scene. Because like Spider-Man is oblivious to her showing up, and
yes.
he knows that Jeff and Billy are there. He's like, "Don't worry, I'll have you out of there." And Spider-Man's voice is great in this episode, by the way. "Don't worry, I'll have you out of there in a jiff," and he frees himself right before Spider-Woman,
right,
or right almost simultaneously. But I kind of like to think that somebody, like maybe Stan Lee or somebody, had an influence and said they didn't want Spider-Man to be too subservient in this.
Yeah.
So they established that he could have broken out himself if he needed to, because it was very odd that she didn't free him.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if like she had pushed a button and freed him.
I thought
he thought he freed himself.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't get that. I kind of thought that she was using like her venom blasts
to
free Jeff and Billy. And Spider-Man was struggling the whole time, and he had been wearing it down.
Yeah.
And then he snapped it, and
right.
And then he's like, "Huh?"
Yeah. He's definitely like not taking her entirely seriously.
No,
although he's not weird. Like there's another episode he's in where he's much worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
He's just like
here. He just seemed to treat her more or less an equal in this one, and
yeah,
which he should, because she's like 10 times more powerful than he is.
Yes. And then he's like, "Well, I got to go stop the mummies."
Yeah.
And he just runs off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the next time we see him, he's in London.
Well, he's got to go where the mummies are.
Again, yeah, he does. But how is he getting there?
Yeah.
Is he webbing his way there?
I don't know. He's presumably got a finite supply of webbing.
Yeah. Does he have a jet copter?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember having like a toy Spider-Man helicopter, but
yeah.
I don't know if that's canon.
He's getting there pretty quickly, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
Maybe he got shot out of a cannon.
Oh, maybe.
Super cannon shot him all the way to London.
Right. In London, the pyramids are turning people into mummies.
Yeah.
And even Spider-Man, he's hanging off Big Ben, I think. Big Ben, yeah. And he gets partially mummified.
Yeah. He's starting. He can feel himself turning into a mummy. He's starting to be turned into a mummy. So it's urgent.
Right. And so they're flying. I don't know what their intended goal was, but they're in the jetcopter.
I guess they're going back home. It seems like.
I think so. Yeah. And she has a spider sense vision thing, and it's like, nope, take us to London. And Jeff's like, London. Call it women's intuition.
Right.
So they're on their way to London, and over London, the best, really the best thing. She's like realizes she's got to turn into Spider-Woman.
Yeah.
How is she going to do it? She's in a helicopter.
Right.
Excuse me, a jetcopter.
Right. It's really impossible.
Yes. So she throws herself out of the helicopter.
Literally. Yes. She falls backwards out of the helicopter. And Billy's like, "Aunt Jessica."
Right. And she transforms in the air.
Yeah.
Now, in the cartoon, it seems she can just plain fly.
Yeah. Which
in the comic, she is like a gliding sort of thing. So, I think in this situation, it's plausible. Yeah. Comics wise. But other times she's like, ooh.
She seems to have pure flight.
Yeah. Yes. But, she essentially falls to her doom as far as they know.
Yes.
Because other times it's like, oh, she's fine. She's over there.
Right.
Or whatever,
Right. She's in a closet or, she just had to go lay down somewhere. But no, this time she hurled herself out of a helicopter. Yeah, that was the best. Let me just say, this was the moment I knew I loved this cartoon and was going to watch all the episodes in a very short period of time. That right there was, I think, the precise moment where I fell in love with Spider-Woman.
So she saves Spider-Man, but then they got to cure his mummy thing.
Yeah.
So she's like, well, we need to go to the Egyptology Center in Geneva.
In Geneva, yes.
There they go.
Cut to. Egyptology Center in Geneva.
Yes. And it seems like all they do is just unwrap the wrappings.
Yeah, despite saying how they're indestructible. Like, it's a good thing we caught you when we did.
Yeah.
Or what? I would have had to unwrap you again? Or right. He's like casually peeling them off while talking about how indestructible they are.
Yeah.
At least one of them is. There's two of these scientist types. There's
yes.
The one with I guess that's a Swedish accent, maybe?
Maybe.
Or Swiss accent.
Yeah. I don't know, for a cartoon being made by a French company, the accents are really not.
Yeah.
Even the French accents are really.
They're really not on target. No.
One of them, but one of the scientists says that their theory is that the shape of the pyramids affects mummification.
Yeah, he says
we don't know much.
Energy.
Yes.
They get their energy from the shape of the pyramid or something.
Right.
And he doesn't even say well, the sun is pointing. He just says something very basic like the shape of the pyramid is how they get their power.
Yeah, but a light bulb goes off in Spider-Woman's mind, and they go back to London, I think. Maybe the pyramids have come to Geneva now.
Yeah. No, they're back in.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not in Geneva. I think they have to go back to.
And she leads the lead mummy on a chase. Then Spider-Man uses his webs to create a cube around the pyramid.
Yeah.
And that's all it took. A cube.
Around the pyramid.
Yes, around the pyramid.
Yeah, the pyramid is not itself transformed in any way.
No. It's just put in a box.
Right.
And Khufu is they've found our one weakness.
Yeah.
Leave Earth.
And they all go flying. Even though only one of them is in the cube, too. Everybody else is...
Cubes, oh!
This would have been an opportunity maybe to teach kids something about, like, math or something, but they didn't really do that.
Right.
They could have tried, at least, with a Pythagorean theorem in there or something, or...
Sure.
But, no, they didn't do that.
No, even the math they did show was fake math.
Yeah, it was. And immediately disavowed by Billy himself.
Yes. And I don't even know how, like, Spider-Man could make his webs into a cube.
Yeah, I've never seen him. I mean, I've seen him make a solid.
Yeah,
he can make a solid thing like a small boxer or something. But
right.
But because you can see the pyramid inside it.
Yes.
So it's like a cube framework.
Right. It's like a fence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but that was enough. Right away. Okay. Well, we've had it. We got to go back and regroup because they've discovered our one weakness.
Maybe millions of years from now they'll figure it out again.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope we're not there because I don't want to turn into a mummy.
Yeah.
And of course, once they start going,
Yeah.
as we know, it wears off immediately once they leave Earth's
Yes.
atmosphere. The effects wear off, and everything disappears. The bandages disappear, and everybody's like stunned, but back to normal.
Yes. Power of cubes.
Yeah.
And then the Jeff and Billy are like moping in a park.
Yeah.
So at least they're having a reasonable human response to this someone they care about falling to her death.
Mm-hmm.
But then she just walks up as Jessica again, of course.
Right.
And Spider-Woman saved her.
Yeah.
Jeff, of course, uses this as an excuse, not to express his affection or relief so much as to remind her that this kind of work is too dangerous for a woman.
Yes. Jeff.
But then, she says she's as brave as any man, but then a spider crawls on her and she pretends to be scared.
Right.
And Billy's like, "Oh, Aunt Jessica, if you could only be a little more like Spider-Woman."
And they all laugh.
Da, 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 da.
And sadly, she does not wink at the camera in this one.
No, not in this one.
But later on she will. But
yeah.
Yes, the majestic theme song. Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, boy, that was the Pyramids of Terror. There's a lot going on in that episode.
There is.
They hedged their bets a little bit by including Spider-Man, it seemed like, in that first episode. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's something they wanted to promote. Very unusual use of Spider-Man.
Yes.
It does seem like blatantly like he really didn't need to be in there at all. That they just had him so that they could promote him as a guest star.
I mean, he did make that cube.
He did, but Spider-Woman could have done that with her spider line.
Yeah. So, to be clear, I hope I have this. In the comics, she has the Venom Blast. She can crawl on walls.
Okay.
Super strength. And then the pheromone thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she has fighting skills from being an agent of Hydra. And that's it. So, no spider telepathy, no spider webs, no spider lines, no spider sense.
Right.
No spider hearing.
Yeah.
There's a later episode where she uses some sort of bubble. She's like underwater.
Right. Yes. Yeah, to like cover herself.
To breathe, yeah.
Yeah. She does seem to be adaptable to any situation.
Yes.
An unlimited reserve of powers, apparently.
Which maybe is very spidery,
Yeah, spiders are very versatile animals.
Yes, they're survivors. Now, I can understand like the web stuff because that makes for good animation.
Right.
And, some of the other stuff is good shortcuts, I guess. The spider sense helps out. But
yeah. And, one of my favorite pieces of animation that we haven't mentioned is, she does do it in this episode, is she like does like a sudden turnaround and does like a Charlie's Angels style like thing where her hair like kind of like flows a little bit and it's like a sudden like pivot.
Right.
Very much like a Charlie's Angels kind of thing.
Yeah, there are a few things that look like they're, did the rotoscoping thing.
Yeah.
Like when she climbs in something and
right.
But then other times I think you can, especially with Spider-Man, you notice it because of his webs. Mm-hmm. Like they do the thing where they're only animating the neck and a little bit of the shoulders up.
Right.
So when his head's moving, like the webs are getting all out of line with his shoulders.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, what can you say? Like we probably missed it. There's a very good recap, but we might have even missed a few things because there's
I'm sure.
Any given episode, there's all sorts of these crazy things that happen.
Yes.
But it's great. Pretty much every episode is like this. And it may not start out totally crazy, but eventually it'll get there.
Right. Well, the last one I watched seemed like it was kind of
Yeah.
And then it ended up with like robots trying to take over the world.
Yeah, and you know what? I have to think about it to make sure I know which one that was. Were you watching like the Hollywood episode with the director?
There's that one, but the Olympic episode.
Oh yeah.
Where?
Yes.
Or there's like a French guy controlling robots of athletes and using them to mind control the world.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. I mean, could we argue that this really captures the zeitgeist of the era? Because we know, we've talked about this before, the late 70s was, the paranormal was very popular, aliens, and so this series explores like the Bermuda Triangle. It explains like the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle.
Right.
Aliens, UFOs, this quite
time
possibly.
Travel.
Yes, time travel. This show is quite possibly the originator of that theory that aliens created the pyramids. And is it fair to say that Spider-Woman, that Jeff Scott created that theory?
I think it pre-existed.
Oh, okay. Well, that's too bad. But
they certainly grabbed onto it.
We get monsters and all
Amazons.
kinds of things. Yes. There's a little something for everybody.
I haven't seen it yet, but I know they go to space.
Yeah. Yes, they go to the moon.
Yes.
And do things there. They don't just like hang out in the ship either.
Right. Oh, good.
I mean, really, folks, any episode is worth watching.
Does Billy's astronaut uniform have the number 0 on it?
Actually, I believe there happens to be a Civilians in Space program that he's participating in, him and Jeff.
course.
And Jessica. Well, it'll make a great story for Justice magazine.
I can't wait till Spider-Woman just randomly shows up there and they're not suspicious at all.
As a common motif is Spider-Woman saving Jessica, Spider-Woman happening to be everywhere Jessica is, and them never noticing.
Right.
Every now and then they kind of raise an eyebrow, I think, but most of the time they just like, oh, huh. Cool. Spider-Woman saved Jessica. Well, and I don't want to give it away, but there's one episode where there's some mistaken identity, and it seems like her identity is exposed, but she has a very elegant solution.
I also like, sometimes they do explain things, but only after, like the one set in Norway that involves time travel. Like something's happening and it's like a natural disaster, and she just shows up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I was like, just watching it, it's like what?
Yeah.
And then it turns out they were there to do an article or something.
Right.
But had a good explanation. But I still like just how often I can react to the show. Like,
that's right.
What? Or when people are falling into traps and stuff. Don't.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's the Kingpin makes an appearance in one episode.
Dormammu.
Yeah, Steeljaws is a memorable villain. There's all kind of colorful characters. Not a lot of cameos by other heroes, although Spider-Man, as you mentioned, makes another appearance and is kind of considerably more patronizing.
Yes.
But I love this series.
Yeah,
this is great. This is like maybe the big hidden gem on Disney Plus that I don't see people talking about.
Right.
Hopefully we can call people's attention to it.
Yeah, I hope to see like an article about Disney being surprised at the streaming numbers of Spider-Woman.
Make your voice heard, people. Put on your TV and just autoplay like all these Marvel cartoons so we can get more of them.
Yes.
Because there's more out there I'd like to see.
Yeah.
I'd like to see Fred and Barney meet the Thing. That seems maybe less likely.
Yeah.
But
yeah, they probably don't.
I guess actually that was, I think some of that was separate cartoons, like the Thing and Fred and Barney happened to be in the same show.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it wasn't like where they were teaming up with a Shmoo every week.
Right, yeah, that's a separate.
But still, the Thing cartoons aren't up there, and so.
Does Hanna-Barbera own those, maybe? Or Warner?
I would think so. Maybe there's some kind of like co-ownership situation that's kind of messy.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
They're definitely, a bunch. 60s Marvel, 60s Spider-Man.
Fantastic Four.
So that 60s one is a Hanna-Barbera, too.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, and then there's the 70s Fantastic Four, which might be the same company that did this. And that's a pretty wild one, too.
Yeah, and then of course the big one missing is like the Hulk, early '80s Hulk cartoons, which the Spider-Mans are up there, so I don't know why the Hulk isn't up there, but hopefully that's on the way.
Yeah,
but we've got Spider-Woman, and I thoroughly enjoy it. Comes with the highest recommendation.
Yes, and I will be finishing the rest of the season.
As will I.
Yes.
And I don't know how much more they can offer, but I've looked at a couple of the episode descriptions. It's like, oh, okay, that sounds pretty cool too.
Yeah.
So I don't think it lets up.
No.
And I will say too, if you remember, Spider-Man is Amazing Friends, that was fun, and it's not quite to the level this is. Spider-Woman is way crazier than Spider-Man is Amazing Friends, which itself had some moments.
Yes, but is like goodish.
Yeah. I got to find out a little bit more. I'm assuming the ratings weren't great for it. Go figure. It didn't catch on, but
or maybe the studio folded while they were making it or something.
Yeah, I don't know. But it's a shame that there are only 16 episodes. They pulled the plug on it pretty quickly, it seems like.
Yeah, that does seem pretty quick for animation.
It seems like if they had gone like maybe another 16 episodes, it could have run for like 2 years or a couple of years.
Yeah, maybe Jeff Scott just ran out of ideas.
Yeah.
They told him, like, listen, we know you're going to get 16 episodes. A good chance you won't get anything else.
Yeah.
He's just like, okay, I'm putting it all in.
Throwing everything in there. That's what he does on every show.
Yes.
He's got his ideas. He's good for 16 episodes, and then he's got to move on to something else, or he burns out.
He takes like a year off. What else can I do? In the case of this, there really is no, other than, general heroic deeds, there's no attempt at moralizing or anything.
No, that's true. You don't really learn anything. Billy doesn't learn anything.
It's just straight up adventure.
Yeah. With a little touch of light comedy.
Well, except for the not so subtle moralizing about gender politics.
Yeah, and even then, it's not really in your face. It's kind of like, it's like, well, this is a buffoon, but pretty standard for the time, I would say.
Yeah,
it's not really like explicit about it. It's clear, but not drilled into you.
And I wonder, on the one hand, like her playing both roles, like pretending to be kind of less than she is to hide her identity. On the one hand, that seems like maybe that's not great, but then you get the impression sometimes that that's how women feel.
Yeah,
that they have to pretend to be something for men.
Right.
So maybe That's actually insightful.
That's pretty deep. Now, of course, also at the same time, Clark Kent was doing that, and Peter Parker were doing similar things.
Yes.
But it does have a special added dimension, especially when you've got her own nephew kind of teasing her for being,
Yeah, and clearly she's she's running this magazine.
Yeah.
So it's not like she's dumb or anything. Like, they never do that.
Yeah, they don't really acknowledge her weakness professionally either.
That's true. But they don't think she's stupid. They just think she's not.
Right. She has her own place, I guess.
Yeah. I guess she's dainty.
Yeah, exactly. I guess they can respect her ability to come up with a story on a deadline, but it didn't seem like they always trust her editorial judgment either. But
sure. Well, 12-year-olds know better.
Well, although she does have her woman's intuition, though, so yes. I guess they respect that.
Yeah, that's just because it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't want to deal with
whatever.
London? Yeah. Why London?
Women's intuition. Yeah, well, okay. I'm not going to get into it.
Yeah, I thought, by the way, that they were in like San Francisco for some reason.
Oh, I know her character.
So maybe that's another episode where they actually show like what looks like the Golden Gate Bridge, I think.
Oh, okay.
But most of the time, that doesn't explain why.
Jessica Drew did spend time there as a comics character, as a private detective.
Yeah, but it's not explicit at all.
No, so I don't know. I could recommend some of the recent Spider-Woman comics. Yeah, entertaining comics. Yeah. Not this style.
Entertaining in their own way.
Yeah, and more like it's a good story.
Ah, okay. Well, if you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like there was a thing, I guess, when she was depowered, she was a private investigator. I didn't remember this, but she was in a bunch of issues of Wolverine, just as herself.
Really?
And, like when that first started as its own series. Mm-hmm. And then, but more recently, the last time she had a series, she was doing like private investigator stuff with the help of Ben Urich and the Daily Bugle. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty fun. And she had a baby.
Okay. Well, she's got quite an accomplished career in the comics, but...
Yeah, and she's more integrated into the Spider-Man universe or area of comics now.
Well, it still seems like she's more powerful in the comic books and does all kinds of things in the comic books, so... I don't know. I might have to pick Spider-Woman of the cartoon against Spider-Woman of the comics.
Yeah, I think she'd be more. She's got some advantages.
She's got more options, yeah.
And a jet copter.
Yeah.
All right, that's Spider-Woman. We're sorry to the show that we booted to next season. Or maybe never. I don't know. But we had to do this.
Yes. This episode brought to you by Justice Magazine, the best magazine in the world about justice. And Egyptian artifacts or something. We're not entirely clear what they do. This episode also brought to you by Jetcopter Air, the future of transportation. This episode also brought to you by the planet Hotep. We're working on that cube thing, and once we figure it out, we're coming back. Ha 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 ha. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network Shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.